Amen. Hey, how we doing, Real Life Church? Whoa, that's amazing. That's amazing. Even with the snow yesterday, there's still enthusiasm. That's good. Hey, as Bob mentioned, my name is James Brown, and I do feel good because I know you're going to ask me how I feel, and let's get that out of the way. I'm going to be serving as your transition pastor, and I couldn't be more excited about this. I have been a fan from afar for as long as you have been in existence. This is a church that the denomination, the group of churches, tribes that I run with, that we talk about, and I just want you to know that the denomination, our tribe of churches, is so proud of what has happened in Waseca. And so I'm excited to be here myself. This has been a journey of 14 years of connecting Jesus to real life, and I'm excited just to play a part in that, in helping Real Life continue accomplishing that mission for years and years to come. And so if you're new today, I just want to personally welcome you. I'm new as well. You showed up in an awesome day on this Sunday because we are a week away from what I consider to be the Super Bowl of Christianity. Easter! Easter, good, right? So if you're new, welcome. Come back for Easter. If you're not new, if you're old here, glad you're here as well. If you've been around the last couple of months, you know that we've been working our way through one of the biographies of Jesus called the Gospel of Luke, written by a dude named Luke. And so the series and the tagline for the series is this playlist of sermons has been entitled Luke, Walking with Jesus. And so today, I just want to make a little series tweak for Holy Week. And instead of calling it Luke Walking with Jesus for the next 3 sermons, I want to change it to Luke Eating with Jesus. Why? Because I like to eat. I'm a fan of the food. But not just that, as you have maybe seen, this is a theme in the Gospels and the biographies of Jesus as well. And I think part of the reason for that is because meals have the potential to be powerful moments in people's lives. Life-changing moments, in fact. I would argue that many meals can be opportunities for transformation. And I had one of those meals almost 2 decades ago now. In fact, 20 years ago, something happened to me that has forever changed the face of fast food dining. 20 years ago, 12 young men, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that's the exact same number as Jesus' disciples. 12 young men met at a Wendy's in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, a city southeast of the Twin Cities, met together to participate in what has been considered by many people to be a milestone in human achievement. 20 years ago, 12 young men accepted a challenge long before the planking challenge, long before the Tide Pod challenge was ever a thing. They accepted a challenge that we designated as the Wendy's Dollar Menu Challenge. The Wendy's Dollar Menu Challenge. What is the Wendy's Dollar Menu Challenge, you might be asking? Well, in short, here it is. You get one sitting to eat every item on the Wendy's Dollar Menu. Now, clearly, due to inflation, this menu no longer exists. But at that time, the dollar menu was comprised of 11 items. You had to eat a junior bacon cheeseburger, a junior cheeseburger deluxe, a double cheeseburger, a Biggie's fry, a 5-piece chicken nuggets, a baked potato, a chili, a side salad, a Caesar side salad, a Frosty, and a Biggie drink. And all of these 11 items had to be consumed in one single sitting. Of all the 12 that accepted the challenge that day, only 5 completed it. And I am honored and slightly ashamed to say that I was included not among the dollar menu quitters, but rather that day I joined the elite list of dollar menu completers. Seriously, no need for a standing ovation. You can just stay seated at this time. Now, following this particular meal, I found out fairly quickly that I would never be the same. My internal organs would never be the same. But it wasn't just my body that would be changed in that moment. Something else was changing as well. Because that meal together caused us to experience not only an expanding of our waistbands, but also a tightening of our friendship, a strengthening of our relationship. Seriously, after this metaphorical Last Supper, as I vowed to never eat at Wendy's again, as I lay in my stretchy pants, paralyzed on the floor of my apartment, I realized something. I realized a weighty truth. I realized something of huge significance, which was this: that there is something powerful about a meal, that there is something life-changing about a dinner invite. There's something life-changing about being invited to dinner. Because you see, a little over 20 years ago, I had just moved to the Twin Cities. It was going to be a new area for me. I was going to be far, far away from my hometown in rural Ohio. I just started a new job, and I was leaving behind everything that I knew, everything that I considered familiar. I packed up all my belongings with my Ford Focus in tow, realizing that would never work up here shortly after that. Leaving behind my family, my lifelong friends, my house that I had built back, leaving everything that I considered to be comfortable. And for the very first time, I found myself disconnected. For the very first time in my life, I found myself on the outside. That was until I was invited to be a part of this meal. And even though I was the new guy at the table, even though I was an outsider, what began as a group of guys with whom I had no connection, except for the fact that we all went to the same church, after this meal, we became a group of friends. But what started for me as a group of strangers, after this invite, it ultimately became this band of brothers. And amazingly, after that meal, over years and years of our lives together, I've had the privilege of being a part of their life. And in addition to the sort of the endless recountings of the story of our shared gluttony over even more meals, I've had the privilege of walking with them as we together struggled with life, as we graduated from our various educational programs, walking with them as they changed jobs and moved to other states and joined the military, walking with them as we broke down and cried over rejection and acceptance letters, walking with them as we ended relationships and started new ones, walking with them as we fought and then forgave family members, or bought new cars or new houses, or confessed deeply painful experiences, or even experienced forgiveness and freedom from sin. Walking with them as I gave them advice about life and as they gave me advice as well. And where did it all begin? Where did this journey begin? It all started with a dinner invite. You see, there's something life-changing about being invited to dinner. And I would submit to you that Jesus knew this better than anyone else. In fact, one of the things that I think is so unique about Jesus' eating strategy is that he was so incredibly intentional about it. As you've been working through and walking through the Gospel of Luke this year, you've probably already recognized this. That Jesus' day-to-day activities were filled with all kinds of meals. And Jesus invited individuals to these meals. He invited outsiders that would have been excluded if anyone else other than Jesus would have been hosting that meal. And what you've probably seen is that this sort of invitation from Jesus changes someone so that they'll never, ever be the same again. So today I want to walk with you through what I think might just be the most famous example of this reality, of this truth. So if you have a Bible or a Bible app with you today, I want to invite you to join me in Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19. Because I want to introduce you to a guy who literally went out on a limb to find Jesus. And when we look at his life, I think we learn a little bit more about how Jesus works and what we're supposed to be up to as his followers. what we're supposed to be up to, maybe even more importantly than that, as a church. And so I'm going to read the first 3 verses, and let's see if we can find out about this person who was trying to find out about Jesus. So check it out. Luke 19, verse 1 starts like this. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. Now, there was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. Now, the first 3 verses here give us a ton of information about this guy named Zacchaeus. For example, what did Zach do for a living? He was a tax collector, right? A tax collector, huh? Yeah. Every young kid's dream, right? To grow up and be a tax collector. Growing up, we all have dreams. We all have dreams about what we want to be one day. I just want you in your own mind, take a second and travel back in your own memory to when you were a kid. Now, some of you will need to be careful because that's pretty far back, and I don't want you to get lost along the way. But travel back as far as you're comfortable and answer the question, as a child, what did I want to become when I was all grown up? What did I want to be when I grew up? Real quick, turn to somebody sitting next to you and give them your answer. What did you want to be when you grew up? When you grew up. Go ahead. Good, good. All right, here we go. Good, good. Quick survey. Let's see. How many of you wanted to be something in a uniform? Fireman, police officer, crew of the Star Trek Enterprise. Any? Yeah, a couple of you. Good. Anybody in the art world? Musician, actor, painter, writer. Yeah, very good. How about something in the sports world? Basketball pro, baseball, bocce ball pro. Any of those? A couple of those. Good. Okay. Something in the healing professions? Doctor, nurse, counselor. I see those hands. Good. Very good. Tax collector? One ambitious young tax collector. Yeah, you're the only one I ever heard of that wanted to grow up and be a tax collector. Yeah, they've never been popular in any society at any point, in any context, in any culture. And in the time of Jesus, tax collectors were especially despised, especially detested, loathed, abhorred, and hated. Thank you, thesaurus.com. All right? How many of you seen the show Dirty Jobs? Anybody watch that show? Yeah. Mike Rowe, host of this show, is crazy. He is absolutely insane. You could not pay me enough money in the world to do some of the stuff that he has done, because each episode is dedicated to participating in the most vile and disgusting jobs that this planet has to offer. Now, if Mike Rowe was around during the days of Jesus, that there would have been a handful of jobs that would have probably made his show. Because in the first century world of the ancient Near East, the rabbis and religious leaders of that time, they would compile lists of dirty jobs, of despised vocations, and then forbade the people from engaging in them. And this list varied from region to region and area to area. In some regions, the list included things like doctors and butchers, because these professions tended to cater to the wealthy and tended to exploit the poor. But the list also included professions, not because they were dishonorable, but because they were staying nasty. They were just nasty, like tanners of animal skins and dung collectors. Dung collectors. Yeah, you heard me right. In my first sermon with you, I've said the word dung collector, right? Yeah, that is a thing. And if you were desperate for a job in the first century world, you could go on Indeed.com and get a gig as a gatherer of duty. That is what you could do. This profession, dung collector, was so abhorrent, in fact, that if a woman married a man and he decided that he wanted to be a DC, a dung collector, she actually had the right to legally divorce him. She could simply go into the courtroom and then proclaim the words, "I thought I could endure it, but I cannot." And the judge would grant her a divorce on the spot. And then the woman would receive a pretty significant settlement. Lesson here, mama, don't let your babies grow up to be dung collectors. And when you look at the dirty jobs of Jesus' day, dung collecting was bad. But it wasn't the worst, because below the professional gambler, below the scam artist, even below the dung collector, you would find the most despised profession of all, which is tax collector. And the reason for this had to do with the why and how they exacted taxes from their fellow countrymen. You see, during the time of Jesus, Israel was occupied by the Roman Empire. And like every other conquering nation, the Romans were interested in squeezing as much money as humanly possible out of the countries that they dominated. So they required the payment of taxes, lots and lots and lots of taxes, and then they sent out the locals to collect those taxes. That's how the system in that day worked. The Roman government would let people bid for the right to be a tax collector for a certain region. Somebody would say something like, "Caesar, I think I can get you 10 million in taxes from Waseca County." And someone would say, no, I think I can get you 12 million. No, I can get you 15 million, Caesar. And then the person with the highest bid would then get the job. And the tax collector was sent out to collect as much taxes as he thought he could possibly get away with. He paid Rome what he had promised them, and then the rest was his to keep. You see, the system that the Romans created was set up to keep those who were collecting taxes highly motivated to feed their greed. And this is why verse 2 would have been so incredibly painful for those first hearers to hear this story. Verse 2 says, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region. And he had become very what? Very rich. Very rich. You see, being a tax collector was bad enough, but you absolutely couldn't get any lower than a rich tax collector. He was fleecing his fellow Jews for the Romans and for personal profit. But when you read this story, you have to ask the question, did all that money make him happy? You see, sometimes I think we can assume from Zacchaeus that having it all isn't enough. But what we think we need isn't really what we need. It turns out that something was missing in Zach's life, and that's why he does what he does in verse 3. Look at it with me. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. I totally connect with Zacchaeus in this moment. So what did he do? So he ran ahead in verse 4, and he climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. You see, something is drawing him to Jesus. And he thought he was looking for Jesus, but he quickly realized that Jesus was actually looking for him. Look at verse 5. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. By name. I wonder how long has it been since Zacchaeus has been called by not a name, but by his name. But Jesus does that. He looks up. He's looking for him. And he says, Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. Not only does he acknowledge this swindler by name, but he invites himself to Zach's house for some burgers and some brats on the grill. He says, come down, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. We're going to eat together. And that dinner invitation changes everything for him. Look at verse 6. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and he took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Not everybody was happy about this, but some of the people were displeased. He's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, understatement in their context. Verse 8, meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I've cheated people on their taxes, if I've cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And Jesus responds to this new faith. He says, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. Verse 10, I love this. For the Son of Man, this is his business. The Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Wow. Real life, this is so good. What happens after someone finds Jesus? Or rather, Jesus finds them. What happens? What happens is they change. What happens is that they are never the same again. Because what started as a dinner invite quickly became the basis for a brand new life. Because there's something powerful, something significant, something life-changing when it comes to an invite. See, only Jesus can take a tight-fisted scoundrel like Zacchaeus and turn him into a kind and compassionate and generous person. In fact, that's exactly the business that Jesus is in, the business of transformation, the business of life change. He's in the business of seeking and saving those who are lost. He's in the business of going out of his way to find those individuals that have made what seem like disqualifying life decisions. Going out of his way to find those who might be considered despised by our culture, who might be considered counted out or even outsiders. You see, the business of Jesus is to go to those who have real life problems and who are looking for real life answers and real life change. You see, that's the business that Jesus is in. And as his followers, that's the business that we are in as his church as well. Now, I don't know if you know this yet, but next Sunday is Easter. And some even call this the Super Bowl of Christianity. I don't know who, but some people do. And so this week, I want to invite you to imitate Jesus. This week, I want to invite you to put up your radar for the Zacchaeuses of your world. The Zacchaeuses at your work, or the Zacchaeus across the street from you, or the Zacchaeus maybe in your own home. To put up your radar, to notice them, to call them by name, and then offer, like Jesus, offer them an invite. An invite, maybe to dinner, maybe to coffee, but definitely to one of the Easter services on Sunday. I mean, maybe you do it Jesus style and invite yourself over to their house. I've been doing that strategy for many years, and it's very Jesus-like, and it works every time. Maybe you're that bold to do that, but definitely take the step to invite them to this house, to this church. Because if they feel far from God, this next Sunday, they're going to hear about a God who is standing at the door of their life and knocking on it. And if they're willing to open it, what they're going to find is that Jesus is ready to come in and to share a meal with them as friends. And I know there is so much change that is happening here. There's so much that's different and going to be different at this place. But one thing I can tell you is that the mission is not one of those things. That regardless of who stands up here or who does the speaking or the leading in this place, Jesus is still seeking and saving those who are lost and inviting us to help him in that journey, in that process. And so I want to say to you this week, take the risk. Have the conversation. Make the call. Send the text. Give the offer. Extend the invite. Why? Well, because when it has to do with Jesus, there is always something life-changing about an invitation. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for this moment. And God, we thank you that for so many of us, you extended that invitation to us. As we were in our own metaphorical sycamore trees, you looked up at us and called our name, and we came down. And God, we thank you that you've invited us into that process as well. That in our own houses, in our own neighborhoods, in our workplaces, in our sports activities, on our kids' teams. God, there are people, there are Zacchaeuses that you have put in front of us. And God, I pray that this week would be the moment that we reach out, that we call, that we invite, that we extend an invitation to hear a message about you that will change them, not just in this life, but for eternity as well. And God, we thank you. You've done that for us. Give us the courage to do it for others as well. God, we thank you most of all for Jesus, who made it all possible. And it's in his wonderful name that we pray. And all God's people said.